So we are here today talking about cybersecurity. Nobody wants to get breached. Nobody wants to pay a ransom, but the question is how far are you willing to go to prevent such an unwanted event? My name is Matjaž, Kosem, CEO of Carbonsec. We are a cybersecurity consulting company focusing on testing, such as penetration testing services and red teaming. And today we would like to present you a very interesting case study. But before we do that, please allow me to go to the few interesting basics I always like to repeat to myself at least. So, to be best at defense tactics, every organization has to understand who are their enemies and what are their motivations and objectives. You have to think out of the box with what scenarios are most relevant so you will be prepared appropriately. When we think about our defense mechanisms, we think about two main pillars. One is prevention, and if hacker will breach, and it will breach in some time, we can help with the detection systems. So what do we want to achieve here? We want to increase the time for the hacker to penetrate our environment. So it takes as long as possible. This is done through effective prevention controls. On the right-hand side, time required to detect and stop the attack. We want to decrease that, and we decrease that through effective detection and response controls. At certain point, these two crosses, we call this the threshold of defender success. This means that when these two crosses, the defending team will stop and eradicate the intruder before he achieves their objective. Note that this is for a given level of attacker skill. Attacker can manipulate the time required on both the left and right-hand side here. They can do that by hire more skilled hackers, more investment on research and development, and with purchasing additional 0 day on black market. And in reality, what that means is that the attacker skill really translates into attacker investment. So if we plot the strength of the defenses considering both prevention and detection as one category versus the attacker's investments required, we see that, as expected, when we increase defense capability, we increase the investment required for the attacker to achieve their goal. The attacker has certain objective in mind, a certain motivation, and we can loosely translate that to money value as well. So, when you are about this line, the attacker must spend more than they get in return if they succeed. This means that it doesn't make sense for them to attack you because they have a negative return of investment. The danger zone is where they have a positive return of investment. If you can move to the right through strategic, smart investments in your defense capability, you can decrease defenders' return of investment, even if it's still positive and if there is an organization in the bottom left of this chart. That is going to be a more likely target than an organization that's in the middle of or towards the right, but still in the danger zone. The attacker always chooses the path of least resistance because it means a higher ROI for them. So the bottom line here is that we want to be able to increase the strength of the defenses with the minimum investment required, or if we flip that around, for a given level of investment, we want to move as far right as possible. The question is, how do we do that? How do we know that? How can you test this? If you go out and actually determine what are the most likely adversaries and then simulate that style of attack, this can be done by internal red team, or it can be done by external red team. But taking this approach of a business level objective can tell you a lot on how easy it is or how difficult it is to breach your organization. This kind of simulation will tell you where the gaps are and where the smart money is to be able to invest in your cyber defense capability. So Grega and Andrej, what have we learned? What can we show today regarding this topic?
Thank you, Matjaž, for an introduction. So before we dig into the technology, I'll just spend a few words about me and colleague Andrej. So my name is Grega Prešeren. I'm the CTO in Carbonsec. Andrej will join us shortly. He's our top penetration tester. It's funny, it might not look like it, but together we've got like a quarter of a century of experience in penetration testing. So before we go to the case study, I will just explain a bit about the whole environment. So as Matjaž already mentioned, hackers always try to find the path to your organization with the least resistance. So that means they will attack you from we call that attack vectors or attack surface, whatever you call it. So they might attack your external services. So if you've got any accessible services, they got vulnerability, they will try to exploit it. Then on the other hand, because that is harder and harder these days, they will try to exploit people through social engineering. If that succeeds, then they get access to internal network. And they will try to gain data and so on. But our case study today is focused more on a different kind of a network, like an industrial network or camera network or telephone networks. Why are they so different compared to those? Usually those networks or those systems cannot be patched. That's one thing. Or they run on older systems which don't have any patches. What happens is usually they cannot have any malware protection installed or other protection solutions that we use in our information technology environments. Of course, everything is not that bad. So what do companies usually do to protect such environments? They try to isolate them as much as possible. And we will show you an example. What really happened is when the system was completely isolated in terms of no services were basically available. What that means is that the company where we worked on that project, we can call it, it's not actually a penetration test because we moved on and did a bit more, like a red teaming style exercise. That company, in our regards, was really a mature company regarding cybersecurity. What they did actually, or what they do on daily basis is periodically they do tests, they implement additional measures, they isolate systems, but still, when they do all that stuff, they hire red teamers like us to prove that everything is okay. So if we go to the project or the case study, what we actually had was just one Ethernet connection, Ethernet port. Why we approached like that? Because that port was actually physically exposed, and it could give access to one of those isolated environments. So when we connected to that port, there was no DHCP. We didn't get any IP address. We didn't know nothing. We didn't have any user accounts and so on. But by just passively listening to the traffic, we were able to somehow guess what the IP settings should be. So we set them up, and then the testing started. And now I invite Andrej to show us how all those tests actually happened.
Yeah, hello. Change the wheel. Okay, so first thing we do, we will try.
So so Andrej just checked that the environment is completely isolated, so no ports are actually open. So what do we do now? Andrej, any ideas?
Yeah,
you cannot attack any port now.
We can do our spoofing and capture the traffic and maybe see something there. So
That's a good idea. So let's do it. Everybody here remember what ARP spoofing actually is? It's funny because we talked about it like decades ago, and what's interesting is that we still find that ARP spoofing attacks are possible in most IT environments. We discuss a lot about why that's the case, because we are in the year 2022. Probably companies rely on application encryption and they don't care about traffic interception, but that is not okay, and we will show you that. So ARP spoofing is basically a way to convince a network switch or network device to send traffic instead of to the real destination to us, and then we just forward it to the real destination. And we'll see what that enables us.
yeah, okay, so now we've done ARP spoofing, and we can already see that there is one DNS request which came to our computer, and there is no answer for it, so that the domain doesn't exist. It looks like.
Whoa.
So that's interesting thing. So we can check it on Google if Google knows something about that domain.
So
And
we
can
actually
see,
saw an outgoing traffic which contains a DNS questions to a domain that doesn't exist. So what's that domain, Andrej?
Yeah, we can see that it looks like virus. It does some. You can see that it will make some queries or something like that. But okay, we could.
So what about now? Do you have any ideas? Can we exploit that?
Yeah, we can try to set DNS to show to our Kali Linux IP and see if we get some HTTP request or something like that. So I will do that.
Yeah. So we will spoof that DNS name and redirect the traffic of that looks like malicious code to our server.
Okay, like that.
And then we expect what? Because we saw on the Google, if that happens, then some traffic should be sent to our server.
Yes.
Okay, let's check that out.
7. So I will start HTTP server, and now we are spoofing DNS. I have to.
Okay.
Okay, so now we are spoofing DNS, and we can see that that machine request file 1.rar something. Maybe we can make some such file.
Yeah, so let's give it that file. But what file would you serve to that request?
We will make meterpreter because it's the usual thing to do if you are pen tester.
So let's try to exploit that behavior.
But because it's a RAR file, we don't know how to pack it. So maybe we can, I don't know, put our malicious file into RAR and serve it. Yeah, so like that. Now we have it. We put on that path 1.rar, and inside is our meterpreter session.
Also now you
Now we can.
now it requested it already.
No, it's okay.
Ah.
It requested, yes, but nothing will. Just a second. I have to run my meterpreter.
So when we run our server, we'll see if it connects back to us. So now we gave that server our file. We hope that it will run it and connect back to us. So when Andrej starts that interpreter listener, we'll see if it actually connects to our server. Then we might be able to get access to it.
I have problems with my keyboard.
Ah?
Just a second.
Yeah, that's fine. Just take the time. So basically, we gave it the code. We're setting up a listener, and when that is set up, we'll see if the code will connect back to us by itself. Okay.
Sorry.
Now we got it. That's live hacking. Doesn't happen in a second,
Okay.
but yeah, in a couple of minutes, hopefully we'll be there.
Yeah. So yeah, we have listener, and so nothing happened. Now it should already connect, because if you run meterpreter, the service automatically start to connect back. So what can we do now?
Yeah, that's true. I don't know. Well, in reality, when Andrej was doing that exercise, he needed a couple of iterations to find out how to serve a file that will actually execute. So this was not actually the right way. But since we know it, let's show the right way how to serve the file.
So we
just
pack that meterpreter in 2.rar without raring or anything else. Just do like that.
So that was
And
just a camouflage of the virus. So
let's see
on the
what-
outside, it looked like it requested an archive of some files. But in fact, if that was an executable, it would just execute it. Is that true?
Yeah, it should be like that.
So it happened.
So we can see that there is request on 2.rar, and we got meterpreter session which calls back to our
So can you
server.
verify that?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. So let's see if that's the same system that we scanned before with the nmap. Because remember, when Andrej did the nmap, it showed that no port was actually opened. So how can we then access that?
So you can see that there is .4 IP address, which is the IP
that's the
address
one.
which we want to attack, and we got access to it. So
Perfect. So now we
That-
got what? A local admin account?
yeah,
Yeah. Great.
like a system account on that server.
Perfect. So let me just explain the process in more graphical way, what actually happened. So we got the connection. We set up an IP address which we were able to guess. That's not rocket science actually. Andrej showed the nmap scan, which showed that all ports were actually closed. So we could not actively attack any service on that host or that network. So what we did, we tried to then redirect and capture the traffic that this host is sending out. And we did it with that legacy technique called ARP spoofing or ARP poisoning, which is still, as I mentioned already, it works nowadays in most environments, which is not okay. So what that actually enables us is, okay, that port, that connection was a black box to us. We didn't know anything about it. But now we were able to see the outgoing traffic, but we were not able to send it any traffic to that black box. Or we can send it, but it would just throw it away. So one way of exploiting such system would be to redirect that traffic, which we were able to do through us, and then manipulate that traffic. So that's something we all know. It's called man-in-the-middle attack. So if there were some insecure protocols used, we could exploit them, but that was not the case. So the system did not use any such protocols. So in the end, what we saw were just those DNS queries, which looked like some old infection with some malware. And that domain actually didn't exist anymore. But since we had a man-in-the-middle position, we were able to forge a reply. That way, that malware actually thought that it was communicating with the command and control server. And then we were able to see how that thing works. So what does that actually mean? That's the whole idea. The machine was already infected, so somebody else has already done all those steps of the kill chain. We just exploited that malware. So basically we exploited what somebody else has already exploited in the past. So it's really a marvelous idea. So in the end, what we did was forge a DNS answer which sent all the traffic to our HTTP server. So what Andrej showed us was that that malware wanted to grab that .1 rar file, and then we just had to pack different files and see if any of those files get executed. And as we saw when we packed a meterpreter, which is a no-hacking tool, a meterpreter agent, and just renamed it to something .rar, that malware took it, it executed it, and it opened a backdoor connection to our meterpreter listener.
With bit of luck.
Yeah, so of course, with a lot of trying, nothing comes out in the first try. So now that we have access to that host, of course, in real scenario, what a hacker would do is to move laterally, move vertically onto the network. So what have we actually learned through this case study? Well, as I mentioned, ARP spoofing is still an attack vector that works today. So beware of it, try to fix that. If not DNS queries, then we might be able to intercept some hashes and then crack them and so on. So ARP spoofing is really not a good idea. We showed that systems that are completely hardened, so in that case, the environment was completely isolated, so we saw no service was actually visible to us. But because of that hidden old infection that actually caused no trouble, we were able to exploit the system. So Matjaž, probably that's the answer to the smart money question. So that was a good investment because somebody else might exploit it and be able to access the system. So yeah, I think that's good money. Now, if we joke about it, malware, although that it was old, it seemed like inactive, was in that case our best friend. So let's finish with some cool or fun stuff. We encourage you to, or challenge you to see how good of a red teamer you are. So if you want to participate, you can scan that QR code. It's not phishing attack, okay? Trust me. I'm not kidding, really. So I know that you don't believe me. But yeah, you can find out how good of a red teamer you are. There are some funny questions and answers you will see. And there are a couple of more difficult questions. So everybody that answers them completely gets a chance to win a geeky prize. And you can participate in that quiz till the end of the conference, and then we will notify you who the winner is. So with that, I want to thank you and enjoy the rest of the conference and, of course, the lunch that is proceeding.
Bye.